Stand by this faith, work for it, sacrifice for it. There is nothing in all the world so important as to be loyal to this faith, which has placed before us the loftiest ideals, which has comforted us in sorrow, strengthened us for noble duty, and made the world beautiful. Do not demand immediate results, but rejoice that we are worthy to be entrusted with this great message, that you are strong enough to work for a great true principle without counting the cost. Go on finding ever new applications to these truths and the new enjoyments of their contemplation, always trusting in the one God which ever lives and loves. These are the words of Reverend Olympia Brown. They're found in Singing the Living Tradition, the first Unitarian woman to be ordained by our denomination, and the first woman to be ordained by a larger standing body in the history of the earth. For those of you who may have been scratching your heads about the grammar of the marquee out there, you know, Grok the cavemen say, where women strong. You have to look at it this way. Maybe next week the sign will say, men are, with just the letter R, good LKN. The following week, children plus average. Yes, those are Prairie Home Companion references that will fit within our character limit on our sign. Just a quick aside, I always felt a certain strange delight in listening to that radio show with my family as we huddled around the battery-operated Iowa boombox under the kerosene lamp glow. It was a spoof on an old-timey radio show in an actual old-timey, no electricity kitchen. It is true, though, just as frontier Lutheran women of Minnesota have their virtues, the women of this church are really strong. The elders here of the 60s generation, you had to deal with a huge level of prejudice. You battled against women's places at home mindset. Many of you were the first women in your family to have college educations. Most of you did not have reproductive freedom when you were growing up. My own generations basked in these hard-won freedoms. While wage equity is still lacking, we found more parity. My wife had the ability to choose. I was able to choose my family. In my generation, slightly more women would graduate from college and receive advanced degrees than men. And that was an accomplishment because most of the women I know are just a little smarter than the men I know. So, my own generation, we had it easy. We had it good. And here we are in 2025. For the first time in my lifetime, federal places of employment won't be able to make reference to Women's History Month. Roe v. Wade has been reversed. Huge numbers of women in this country want to be trad wives and vote as they are told by their husbands. Now, a GOP voting bill aimed at immigrants requiring everyone to show a passport or a birth certificate before voting, and that is hugely problematic in itself especially to the ADHD community. I mean, I think I've lost my license maybe 3 times by now, and I have no idea where my birth certificate is. Will have consequences for any woman who may have changed their name after marriage, which is like a lot of women. Out of pure love for women in my life and the tradition of this pulpit, we must say something. What are we doing as a nation? What strange madness. Now let's all take 1 step forward and 3 steps back, shall we? If you're exasperated as I am, I just thought it might be helpful on this day to look back on a strong woman and find some inspiration in her persistence and in her courage. So I came upon Olympia Brown. She was born in 1835 in rural Michigan. Her parents highly valued education and encouraged everyone in the family to learn as much as possible. They purchased books on all subjects, and soon Brown was a learned young woman. She applied to Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. She got in, but she got a little upset when the science professor told her class that they didn't have to actually know the real science of the chemistry that they were teaching. They just had to know enough about chemistry to have an intelligent conversation with somebody they might marry later. And of course, Carol told the story about the, where women were supposed to read from reports, but she would memorize hers and deliver the report from memory like the men, Later, she applied to seminary, which at that time was St. Lawrence Theological School, which is an early Unitarian divinity school that would later become St. Lawrence University, which is a school that I attended for 2.5 years before transferring to the University of Colorado of Boulder. And so that was a strange coincidence. But anyway, the president, upon looking at her application, said, "We'll let you in, but we are probably not going to ordain you." She went in anyway, and she was diligent, serious student with an independent streak. She refused to wear the full-length skirts and dresses of her era and would instead only wear bloomers. Her bare ankles were revealed to the world. Can you believe it? Though the male fellow students in St. Lawrence admired her writing ability, they mocked her for the way that she dressed and for her thin, reedy voice. She was a very slight woman. So they would deliver their own sermons with falsettos outside of her window when she was trying to sleep at night. And I can picture that granite dorm, the only building from that era when I went to St. Lawrence myself. It was a stately, beautiful building. And as I was writing the sermon, I was just thinking, the boys outside the window, and wow. Well, as a result of the mockery, Olympia took voice lessons. She learned to speak from her diaphragm, and soon she was respected as the best female orator of her era. She was now at the end of her studies an accomplished Unitarian theologian and a writer and speaker. She had graduated. She went to the ordination committee of St. Lawrence. She had worked so hard to overcome so much prejudice. And guess what? They denied it. They denied it. You got it. Yes, they denied it. So you know what Olympia Brown did? Did she quit? No. She went to all the Unitarian Universalist churches in northern New York, which went from Albany all the way up to the St. Lawrence Seaway. She convinced them to ordain her. And those churches, they saw the prejudice at St. Lawrence, and they ordained her. Of course, even the open-minded progressive folk of her era, like, Unitarians, were still patriarchal enough to not actually to want a woman to serve them as their minister. As a result, she was only able to serve a string of churches that were barely functioning and no men would want to serve. While serving her first church in Weymouth Landing in Massachusetts, she met Susan B. Anthony and became inspired to work for the women's suffrage movement while she served the string of struggling churches through her career. And she also married a guy named Henry Willis, and she had a boy and a girl. And guess what? She refused to take his last name. She had a moment of prescience about what was going to come today, I think. The last struggling church that she served actually grew by leaps and bounds during her ministry and became one of the most prominent churches in her area. When she was 52, she left full-time ministry to serve the cause of women's suffrage full-time. Her public speaking ability was very well respected, and she really helped the movement become a reality. After the 19th Amendment passed, at 85, she was one of the only early pioneers of the movement to be able to cast her first vote. What a victory. But what do we take away from this profound witness as a congregation today? I was moved by that phrase in the reading, do not demand immediate results, but rejoice that we are worthy to be entrusted with a great message, that you are strong enough to work for a great true principle without counting the cost. I don't know about you, but when I encountered these words, something just sort of relaxed, it uncoiled. It took so very long for women to win the right to vote. And of course, many activists were forced into asylums, force-fed when they went on hunger strikes, were imprisoned, they were ridiculed and maligned, their reputations and positions in society stripped. It reminded me of something greatly important. Like Olympia before us, it may be helpful to remember that no matter what, we are worthy to be entrusted with the message of our central UU values of justice, equity, inclusion, and pluralism. We are strong enough to work for our principles without counting the cost. This is, in religious terminology, our faith. In non-religious terms, this is our conviction. We will, no matter what, bear the message. Yesterday morning, when I joined your incredible witness, the counter-protest to the protest of the Women's Health Clinic, I held those signs you made. I can't tell you all what they said here, but some of them were hilarious. And raised up a chant. And I encountered something I didn't expect to encounter in the freezing cold weather at 6 a.m. My precious Saturday morning, which I usually take off unless there's a wedding or a funeral, by the way. There was some kind of feeling I felt. I hadn't felt it in a while. Joy. Pure joy. To stand proudly, even ridiculously, for what I believe in is absolutely worth it. Even if it was just for a moment. To face the icon of the Virgin Mary and the throng of believers grasping their rosary, praying their Our Fathers, and shout out a good Unitarian prayer of my own. Thank God for the freedom of choice. Thank God for reason. Thank God for the freedom of choice. Thank God for condoms. Really, it was the best therapy I could have dreamed of. But beyond the therapy and the laughter, I mean, Evan is a genius. Just to encounter the truth, to stand for it, and join others also standing for it, what a gift. What a gift. As Brown herself said in all of her organizing and all the speeches that she did for the women's suffrage movement, she said, "He who never sacrificed a present to a future good or a personal to a general one can speak of happiness only as the blind do of colors." It's kind of like flowery Victorian language, is to say, basically, if you don't know how to stand before others, you don't know joy. Let Murray beware the women are strong. Because when the women are strong, everybody's strong. Good looking and above average too. Let all who drive by our doors know this. This is where the women are strong. While the men may wage war and rage, women work long and patiently, shaping the generations. I'm thankful for the strong women who shaped me. I'm thankful for my strong wife and her influence on my daughter. I'm so thankful to be a part of the tradition of Olympia Brown. Blessed be. Blessed be.